you guys can say, hey, this is what we do, and really talk about how it helps the patient. Okay, helps the patient. Okay, I need an additional tank. Am I not? I will be. Yeah. But that's what you're really focusing on is the patient's freedom in their home, in the community, doctor visits, all of that stuff. So.
Do people still actually deliver tanks? I mean, we've never.
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. So you're going to have out here, Lincare is delivering tanks, Life Care Solutions, Pacific Pulmonary. So, there's, but even, I mean, it can be a component of your business, but it should not be the only component of your business. You can say, hey, we do have a small delivery component, whether it's hospice or something like that where you deliver tanks, but to say, hey, every patient we deliver to, is going to get tanks. This is just something where the main focus, and I think I've shown you on did I show you the marketing material? There's a study that was done, and it's not a Homefill study, it's a patient's freedom study.
When you were down there for the grand opening.
Yeah, I think we went over that. But so the way I would set this up, patient's going to probably freak out because you're going to have two machines. They're like, whoa, I got two machines. Okay, just like let me set it up first, and I'll show you how to use it because it comes down to it's a habit of using this machine. So I don't need to plug that in anywhere, but you're going to just set that up for the patient. Show them. I usually show them this cord, okay, because this is an important piece of equipment, okay, and it's linking the concentrator to the Homefill. And the biggest thing on this is you put it in once, you should never have to mess with it again. These little knobs, and this is for your information, not the patient's information, but for your guys' information, these are made to break. These white plastic pieces, they're made to break. Okay, why do you think that is?
Because they pull on it?
Pull on it?
Damage your machine.
Yeah, whoever said that.
Matt.
Okay, it's not going to damage the machine. So we used to have just a straight cord, okay, it wasn't a coil, and these weren't made to break off. So what would happen is, patient, it was actually our CEO's mom, was going by her machine with her walker, and she caught that hose and knocked the machine down, and she fell, and he went into the engineers like, you mother truckers, am I being recorded right now? Okay, yeah. So he said, in a nice way, get it fixed. So a week later they came out with the coil, and they made these to break. So if it does break off, for you drivers and technicians, just go in there with the needle nose pliers and you can pull that out. And then you can just buy this part from us and just reattach it to the hose. So you never have to throw the whole thing away, just replace that piece. So, so you connect that in, and it's just a push. So patients should never have to worry about that coil. If they see, oh, the coil's on the ground or something strange has happened, you can just troubleshoot that over the phone with them, and all they're going to need to do is pop that back in. I've never had that issue, but it could come up. You connect your Homefill, so we'll just say I connected that, it's plugged in, it's working right. Okay. And this is where patients get a little bit nervous. I think all the machines you guys have are newer machines, so it's going to be the Homefill 2. And the way you can tell is the older machines, if you guys ever acquired any from a previous company or you have machines that are back when I was selling Homefills, I called it the claw. It would kind of come up and grab this breastfeeding. But on here, you have these green dots. So if you're on the phone with the patient, you can just say, hey, do you see the green dots? Okay, make sure you see green dots before you drop the tank in. And just the sheer weight almost of the tank, it's going to make those green dots disappear, and the coupler is going to go over that breastfeeding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what will happen sometimes, patient will put it on, they're like, it's on, I don't know why it's not filling, And so you just need to say, hey, let's take the tank off, put the tank on the floor, and I want you to push that coupler down till you can see green dots. And once those
That's
green
like
dots,
the key right there.
Yeah.
The green dots.
yeah. And so, and most of the tanks that you guys are going to have are the way that this is made. It's made for this tank to be It's made to be. Sorry, I was hearing air coming out. It's made to be perpendicular to the coupler. Okay, so this is the coupler. So it's made to be parallel to the ground, I should say. So what will happen sometimes if you have a tank that is typically our M2 tank that is a really tiny one. If you put that on without the bag, it's going to be tilted and it's not going to go on right. So it needs that bag. So.
We don't have it.
Yeah, just in case that does happen, but all of them, the circumference is the same, and this circumference is going to make it so that tank is parallel to the ground. Okay. But sometimes the patient tries to put it on, and it's not going right. But even that coupler kind of is going to level the tank on its own. So that's always going to be parallel to the ground. So.
Those new Homefills.
Can I see it from this side?
The old ones don't always grab the tank.
With that claw that I have, I've trademarked that, so Invacare can't use that. Okay, but yeah, so that's one of the things that we kind of found is if you open that up, there's a pin coming out, and you always had to get that pin kind of spot on, But the other issue we had for years, or I should say for months. We didn't launch this product for about 8 months because we kept going in there with a camera to make sure that everything was clean and stuff and when it would fill. And there was always these brass shavings in it. We're like, what the heck, these metal shavings when we did the camera, put the camera in there. And it was the camera that was cutting into the coupler and causing all those shavings. So we're just like, oh, okay. So it's 8 months we didn't launch this, in 2002, whenever it was, because of that issue. It was our own fault. But, from a patient standpoint, patient drops that in. Always make sure that this is in a offsetting. Are all of yours integrated?
No.
Conservers? Okay. If they're an integrated conserver, okay, and by integrated I just mean that this is on here. All they have to do is turn that to start their oxygen flow. Okay. Just make sure it's always in the off position.
A lot of our patients think that they have to have them on in order to do it.
No.
And that's, I think, where it's not filling.
Yeah. So what will happen a lot of times, tank is empty, and they'll put it on 2 liters continuous, or if it's a post valve tank. Do you guys have a post valve tank? Can you grab one of those real quick? Or doesn't matter the size. But what will happen is if it's open a little bit, air will just cycle through, so it will fill for 10 hours, and this should only take about 2 hours to fill on this tank, but it will just continue to just run through that, and there's no back pressure to it, so this doesn't feel any back pressure, so it just continues to fill and fill and fill. The patient calls, oh, I guess it's been filling for 2 days straight.
How long does that full tank last?
This one, off the top of my head,
Is that a
I'm
5 or 6?
gonna say 8 hours, or it's gonna be. Actually, this one's going to be close to 9.5 hours. This is an M9 tank.
On 2 liter, on 2 liter pulse.
Okay. The thing to keep in mind, the difference between these two, size, but let's say that these are both the same size, okay? The difference is on these 2 tanks, this is a 5-to-1 conserving device, okay? This is a 5-to-1 conserving device on my right hand, and on my left hand is, I don't even know what this one is. Easy Pulse 5. This one also might be a 5-to-1. Do you guys understand those ratios? 5-to-1, 3-to-1, 7-to-1? So what that does, it is going to prolong the amount of oxygen in a tank. And so if let's say this is 3-to-1, okay, this is going to last less than 6 hours, and then this is the same size tank. Let's cut that off. Let's say they're both M6 tanks. This would last 6 hours. This is going to last less than 6.
So 3-to-1 would be
3-to-1 would probably be 5. So if you go to, I think Precision does have an app that you go to, and if you put in the ratio of your conserving device, it will tell you. And I will find out what that is.
Okay.
But
Just
I'm-
as a guide, because it's good to know, because people say, well, how long is it gonna last if I have that? How long is this
I
gonna last?
can't remember the company, but I want to say it's Precision that has them. But so a 7-to-1 is going to be typically your battery powered ones. Okay, they're a little more efficient. They're going to be a lot bigger though, as far as stuff that you have on top of the tank. Okay, so it's going to limit, like if you put a bag on it or a backpack or something. So, but a 7-to-1 device is going to last a lot longer. So this would last probably 7 hours on a 7-to-1 conserving device. So it's going to last you a lot longer. Okay. So I'll send you guys a spreadsheet or a little marketing material, and I think I've given it to you. It just shows the tank sizes and the duration and the fill
I remember getting
times.
it from you. We talked about it.
Okay,
Talked about
I'll
it.
send it to you. I'll do it before I leave.
Thank you.
But when it's an integrated conserver with a 5-to-1 conserving device from Invacare, I can tell you exactly how much time it's going to last, and it's based off of 20 breaths per minute. So do you guys know what 20 breaths per minute entails, what a person's doing typically at 20 breaths per minute?
Exercise, right?
No.
Just a walk.
Sitting watching a movie that they bought from Wallace Home Medical. That's 20 breaths per minute.
On a person that's on oxygen?
No, like that's what this is based off of. So every time I take a breath, okay, 20 breaths per minute is sitting down in this chair watching a movie. Okay. When they walk, they're going to have more breaths per minute. So it's going to go up to 30, 40 breaths per minute, 50 breaths per minute. It's going to extend.
What about someone who is just sitting, who has the COPD or emphysema, who is already on that elevated breaths per minute? That's just going to mean that their
The oxygen is going to go faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Because
their
that's what
requirement is.
that's for
Yeah.
the most part what happens with our clients right now.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily taking more breaths per minute.
Well,
though.
no, because the COPD and all of the ones that
It
are
causes
like,
them to take-
it causes them to take more, and so because they're taking more, their liter flow goes up and their tanks run out quicker. And so they don't understand why these tanks are going out so quickly. And, I mean, if they're being fully charged, that would make sense if it's on a pulse setting. I mean, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that 20 breaths per minute is that's at rest. So if they are exerting themselves at all, if they have a disease state that makes them breathe faster, then that oxygen does go quicker.
Quicker than-
So what I would do is look at saying, hey, what's the ratio, the conserving ratio that we have that patient on? That may be something else to look at. Say, hey, let's start to keep track of our patients. Hey, Mr. Johnson's on a 3-to-1. Maybe we need to put him on a 5-to-1. Maybe he needs a 7-to-1 conserving device. So something to look into, and that would prolong their tanks. But once you get out of the integrated conservers, all of ours are 5-to-1. Once you get into pulse valves, you can dictate that more to the patient. So, any other questions on that? We good?
Yeah.
So when you're in a patient's home, what I always tell the patients, this is how I want them to use the machine. So they wake up in the morning, okay? If their tanks are empty, okay, let's just start. You have 2 tanks completely empty. They start the morning, they drop a tank on, they turn this machine on, the concentrator, they turn the Homefill on, and they're connected to the concentrator while this tank is filling, okay? And to be filling the tank at the same time, they need to be under 3 on a 5-liter concentrator, because this Homefill, regardless of what concentrator you have on there, is always going to take 2 liters, no matter what. So if it's a 10-liter concentrator,
Which is what that
the
is.
max they could be on is 8. Okay. So they fill this tank. Okay, this one gets filled after 2 hours. They pop on the second one, and they can be on the concentrator. Once their tanks are filled in the morning, they're not on a concentrator, or the Homefill is not turned on either. So they turn both machines off, and then they're on tanks the rest of the day. So all day long they're on tanks. After, this is going to last them 9 hours.
On 2 liters per
On
minute.
2 liters per minute conserving. Okay. So at the end of the day, they can say, hey, I can start filling my tanks again. So they get back home, or they're, just around the concentrator, put a tank back on, fill up the tank, be on the concentrator while they're filling it, and then they go to bed, and when they go to sleep, they should be on a concentrator. That's the only time.
Because
With
it's constant flow for them.
Constant
they don't
flow,
have to-
yeah. So that's the only time they should be on a concentrator.
So, if they're on 3 liters
Mhm.
and they're filling tanks at the same time, should they
They're only getting
turn
2.
up the liter flow then a little more?
No.
Then, or because it evenly distributes?
So
Or-
this is always going to steal 2, no matter what.
But it
Because-
takes it off the top.
Takes off the top. So
Okay.
yeah. So if you have this ball set at 3,
Uh-huh.
okay, just think in your mind it's taking 3 and above, no matter what. So
Oh,
the
okay.
patient is always going to be maxed out on a 5-liter concentrator at 3.
Now, if they're over 3, is it going to take longer and still fill it? It's just gonna take longer to fill?
No, it's always going to take 2. So
Always
it's
gonna take
they're
2.
not going to
So
get
it's not
over
gonna
3.
fill then?
No, it's going to fill. It's not going to give them over 3.
Yeah. So if their prescription's 4, okay, this is not the ideal setup for them.
It's still gonna take from them, they're not gonna get what they're
They
supposed to be on.
so I and before way back in the day, I've had patients who are like, hey, I want a home fill. My neighbor has it. I love it. You know, it's awesome. And their liter flow was, I think his was 5, and I'm like, okay, this is not the setup for you. It's like, well, I want the smaller concentrator. I don't want a 10-liter, and I'm like, okay, because the ideal would be to push him to a 10-liter concentrator, still fill it. Those tanks will go a little bit quicker, but he wanted the smaller concentrator, the 5-liter. So we're like, okay, you cannot be on a tank and fill at the same time. So he has to fill a tank or be on a concentrator. He can't do both at the same time. So it was.
So it's like a revolving door, he's always gonna be using a tank
Yeah.
because he's not.
So
moving.
if somebody is over 3, switch them to a 10-liter concentrator, and just let them know that, hey, this tank is going to go faster. You know, because we're basing our numbers most of the time. Most of your patients are going to be 2 or 3 liters. That's the majority of patients that are on oxygen. But once you get above that, then you do need to be a little bit more creative and say, hey, we're going to push to a 10-liter machine. This is why. You know, because you want your patients to be able to fill a tank and be on a concentrator at the same time. That is always the goal with Homefill, is to make sure that they can fill and receive oxygen at the same time. So patient at the end of the day, they have 1 tank filling. They go to bed. Before they go to bed, they drop on another tank. They wake up the next morning. They have 2 tanks filled. So in that situation, if they have 2 tanks filled when they wake up in the morning, they turn the concentrator off and they're on tanks all day. Okay. We have a low energy use flyer that I can email to you today that just kind of goes over that scenario. And a lot of times patients or even especially clinicians or doctors are like, oh, patients can't do that. And my guideline is if a patient can brush their teeth, if they can comb their hair, they can use Homefill. If they can't, and you see patients' hair like, you know, straight up every day, and they look like they just woke up every day, then let's think about something else. But this is really just a situation of forming a new habit as far as, you know, self-hygiene, same type of thing. Hey, if they can do that, if they can do their own self-hygiene, they can use a Homefill. So if a patient has stinky breath, don't give them a Homefill. So, there's one more thing.
What about the HEPA filters? Is that what they call them? In the back of the concentrator?
How yeah,
long
real-
do those last? And
let me answer that real quick before I forget what I was going to tell you. So a patient, if they set their home, put a tank on at night, okay, this machine will turn off. Okay, so the machine's not going to be running, but it's this fan on the back that will continue to run. And this is the same type of fan that you have like on your guys' computer. Okay, so this runs at a super low setting, but the machine is going to stop filling and it will stop running. But that fan just runs to keep the machine cool. So patient doesn't have to worry like, oh, it's going to run all night long. It's going to be super loud all night. It won't be. But with the filters, so I usually tell people when it comes to filters, that depends on how many cats are in the house. Okay.
as standard
Yeah.
demographics where you live.
And you can really find out quickly how clean a patient's home is. Is this clean? Am I touching the clean filter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't lick
Okay.
it, but
Yeah. So, yeah, what happens is just soap and water clean these. I just advise the patient once a week. Yeah, I would look at these. You can be in a patient's homes, and you probably have seen this, where you go into a patient's home after, like, they've had the machine for 6 months, there's a timer right here that tells you if there's usage on the back of this and also on the concentrator on the front. And you can be like, patient's using it and it looks super clean. Like, you know, either they're keeping the filters clean all the time, or they'll sometimes say, oh, I don't even touch it. I didn't know I had to do that. But they just have a super clean house. You're like, congratulations, you've won the award. Other times you go in after like a week, it looks like you went through a war, and you're like, what has happened? You know, like it did a dust storm roll through here, and it's super nasty.
A lot of it's because there's smokers in the house. That's
Yeah.
like the worst one.
It's half and
damage.
half.
Do
A
we
lot
have
of people have
extras
animals
those,
and
or?
Filters?
I've gotten those
Of
back
course.
and they look
It's
great.
probably rare,
Yeah.
but just.
We can order them
it's
if we
just,
don't
you'll
have
have
them.
just cat hair all over this, dog hair all over it and stuff. So this is on this and the concentrator. It's really protecting the internal components from getting anything major inside there. And this one, I mean, in reality, it's not pulling, the Homefill is not pulling any air from outside. The only air that it's pulling is coming from the concentrator. So why we have that, I haven't ever figured that out really. But on here, on the concentrator, it's going to go through 3 filters and sieve beds, which kind of act like a filter. So it's going to have this main filter, and then there's going to be another internal.
Yeah, that one.
If I was strong enough to pull that off, but it's going to run through this HEPA filter. Okay, so typically there's a this is like an accordion. So if I took this out, we could stretch it probably from here to the door. This little accordion filter right here. But there's a line at the bottom. Typically, when you start to see dust and see that get filled up, that's typically when you're going to replace this. Okay, you do want this to get dirty. Okay, because then you do want this to get dirty, because what will happen is if this is super clean and you see hours on the machine, something's wrong where there's not air flowing through this. So just patients don't ever need to touch this. They don't ever need to see this. The only thing they're ever going to touch is this one. But as technicians, you do want to like just check this. Hey, is it working? Is it flowing? And if there's starting to be dirt and dust at the bottom of that line, there's a little line right there, then that's when you'd probably want to replace that.
Now, if there's problems within that suction or clogged filter, whatever, the alarm light, there's an alarm light on there that comes on, correct? When there's any
On the
type of-
concentrator, yes.
Concentrator, yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Yeah.
So because I recently did an in-service and they're saying, well, how will I know if it's clogged, or, you know, of course I encourage them to check the exterior one periodically, and when they're doing that, they can see the other one, they
Yeah.
can pull this and take a look at it visually, and I explained just as you did. So in that case though, if an alarm goes on, I mean, those areas to check first, or do we want them to call us first?
On the concentrator,
Yes.
really there's not much a patient can do if there's an issue with the concentrator. The Homefill has less than a 1% failure rate, so we have over, I think it's 250,000 of these out on the market, and so that's in the world of manufacturing, that's an extremely low failure rate. Concentrator, I can't say the same for concentrators. Those do get beat around a lot more. But as far as a patient, what they can do, they can pop off the back, they can check that filter. Sometimes the biggest thing that I found is with that filter, it will kind of come off a little bit, whether it's moved by the patient or moved by a technician, and it's really loud. So if you pop that filter off and run the machine, it's like a train running through the patient's house. It's super loud.
And how long should that filter last in general?
What will last?
The filter.
It's, like I said, it's dependent.
depends on the environment.
It depends on the environment.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
really
we-
think of,
And we just check them when they
You
come
guys
back,
pick
and we
them up?
replace them if they're super dirty.
Yeah,
So,
And we
think
have
of-
those in store and
Yep.
stuff. Okay.
think of the concentrator, it's an air purifier. That's pretty much all it's doing. It's taking room air, it's going through this filter, it's going through that filter, it goes through one more, there's a bacteria filter that looks like a disc on the other side of the output right there. So it's going through those 3 filters, plus the sieve beds is taking out some chemicals too. But outside of that, it's purifying the air.
Okay.
So when my wife was sick a few months ago, and so I had a humidifier running, and then I had a concentrator, and I just had it running in our room, and our room got super cool, and you know, it was really nice. But it purified the air for me.
Okay.
Back to your question as far as when the customer calls. When I was doing on call, almost all of the times that I had to go out, it turned out that I could have fixed it over the phone if I'd have thought of every single thing out there. One time, it was the gross particle filter, and I mean, even though they'd had it a week, it was just clogged, and it actually shut the machine down because it just overheat the machine if it can't get air. So that's something to talk to them about. Another time, it kept shutting off. Well, it turned out to be their outlet couldn't handle. It was like bad wiring, and it like sparked every time that they plugged it in.
It's just
so.
helpful for me because,
Yeah,
you know, when
that
I'm
shouldn't
in-house
happen.
and I get a phone call about someone, you know, we have this, or you guys brought this out, this is what's happening. I wanna be able to troubleshoot those areas rather than, hey Brandon, when you're done, can you take this call?
Do
Or, "Hey,
we
Ashley."
want our elderly patients going through the back of the concentrator to
Well, no, you
pull
don't-
that HEPA filter?
No.
No, not the
because-
HEPA filter.
No.
No,
This is
the gross
for-
particle filter.
I know, but I know you said that they could also, you could tell them about, and we could also
No,
show
we
them.
don't- we don't
that
tell
would
them about
be
that.
Only in a troubleshooting situation where there would be something that would say, hey, let me have you open up this back. They should never open this up.
Okay.
I would never tell a patient about, hey, you can open this up. Only thing I would tell them is clean this off. And one of the things they can do too, instead of, they can just get a vacuum. If they have a wand,
Oh,
just get up there and vacuum that too. But as far as accessing that HEPA filter, that should never really come up unless there's something wrong with the machine.
I really didn't even know that was in there until I did the end service, and prior to that, I was looking at every little component of that, I'm like,
cut themselves and do what they do.
we have two filters in
You know
there.
what I
I
mean?
didn't know that.
Slow, do you guys have anything?
You don't even need to. I mean, most of the time, that's not. The HEPA filter,
hear
I've
you.
never seen the HEPA
Hello?
filter be a problem for the machine.
It's just the exterior,
Yeah.
right, but.
No, we're good.
You can feel that one, just because of how you feel.
Cool.
Feel that one.
Anything else?
Yeah, we heard you on that one.
Yeah,
Like, smooth.
we're good?
Think we're good.
Feel this one.
All right.
This was a lot softer.
So these, they go.
So like the rib line's open.